Observe this man when society looks at a man over 60 who spends the majority of his time alone, who has stopped answering phone calls, and who has seemingly vanished from his former social circles. Society makes a harsh judgment. They claim he is depressed. They assume he is bitter about the past. They think he has suffered a mental collapse, or that his isolation is a silent cry for help. Family members whisper that he has become a grumpy old hermit. Former friends assume he has simply given up on life. But society is entirely, fundamentally wrong. What you are witnessing is not a collapse. It is not depression. It is not a surrender. What you are looking at is a highly calculated, conscious, and strategic decision. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. Today, we are going to explore a profound psychological and social phenomenon, why men over 60 actively choose to cut people off. We are going to dismantle the societal myth of the lonely old man and reveal the truth. This isn't a story about weakness. It's a story about a man who has finally decided to clean house, protect his energy, and master the art of inner peace. Let's look under the surface. To understand why a senior man cuts people off, we first have to understand the difference between isolation and solitude. Psychology teaches us that isolation is forced upon you. It breeds loneliness, anxiety, and despair. But solitude is chosen. It is a deliberate boundary drawn between oneself and the chaos of the world. When a man reaches his 60s, his brain chemistry and psychological priorities undergo a massive restructuring. According to Carl Jung, the first half of a man's life is dedicated to the external world, building a career, accumulating wealth, raising a family, and establishing a social identity. But the second half of life is meant for the internal world. It is the journey of individuation. Society mistakes his withdrawal for depression because society is obsessed with extroversion. We live in a world that equates constant socialization with happiness. So, when an older man stops showing up to unnecessary gatherings, people assume his mental health is failing. But talk to this man, and you will find out he isn't crying himself to sleep. He's making a strategic exit. He realizes that time is no longer an infinite resource. If he has perhaps 20 healthy years left, why would he spend a single hour of it engaging in small talk he doesn't care about? His withdrawal is not a symptom of illness. It is a symptom of radical clarity. He is trading the noise of the crowd for the absolute luxury of peace. This brings us to the second, and perhaps most crucial, reason for his withdrawal: the systematic elimination of draining relationships. Think about what a man endures over 60 years of life. For decades, he has tolerated people out of sheer necessity. He smiled at toxic bosses to keep his job. He maintained relationships with manipulative family members to keep the peace. He hung out with self-centered friends just because of history. For years, his emotional energy was treated like an all-you-can-eat buffet for other people. But as a man crosses the threshold into his 60s, he performs a brutal audit of his life. He calculates his remaining emotional capital, and he realizes something profound. My energy is too expensive to be spent on cheap connections. Psychologists call this the socio-emotional selectivity theory, developed by Dr. Laura Carstensen. This theory states that as people perceive their time left in life is limited, they shift their focus away from gathering information and new connections, and instead focus entirely on emotional regulation and meaningful relationships. He no longer cares if someone is a relative, a childhood friend, or a former colleague. If a person brings drama, chaos, unreliability, or negativity into his space, they are cut off. No dramatic arguments, no long, emotionally exhausting texts. He simply closes the door and locks it. To the outside world, this looks cold, it looks unforgiving. But to the senior man, it is survival. He has carried the emotional baggage of others for half a century. Now he's putting the bags down. From the moment a man is born, society places an invisible, heavy yoke around his neck. He is taught that his value is entirely tied to his utility. He is expected to provide, to protect, to absorb shock, to suppress his pain, and to constantly accommodate the needs of everyone else around him. He becomes a master of the performance. He says yes when his soul screams no. He bites his tongue to prevent arguments. He sacrifices his own hobbies, his own rest, and his own desires to ensure his family, his company, and his community are satisfied. But when a man reaches 60, a psychological rebellion occurs. The children are grown, the career is over or winding down. The physical energy required to maintain the perfect guy facade has evaporated. He grants himself the one thing society never gave him permission to stop pleasing people. This is a terrifying moment for the people who are used to using him. When a chronic people pleaser finally develops boundaries, the people who benefited from his lack of boundaries will accuse him of being selfish. Let them. The senior man no longer cares about his reputation among people who do not truly love him. He stops pretending to agree with opinions he finds foolish. He stops attending weddings, funerals, and parties for people he doesn't respect. He drops the heavy, suffocating armor of societal expectations. He isn't isolating himself. He's finally exhaling. Once the draining relationships are cut and the masks of people-pleasing are thrown away, the senior man enters a new psychological phase, the discovery of the sacred sanctuary. For most of his life, he was told that being alone meant being a loser. Society weaponizes loneliness to keep us conforming. But when he finally sits alone in his quiet house with his coffee, his books, his thoughts, and his rules, he realizes he has been lied to. Solitude isn't a punishment, it is a prize. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free." In this solitude, the older man can finally hear his own inner voice. For decades, his thoughts were drowned out by the demands of his boss, the arguments of his spouse, the needs of his children, and the noise of the culture. Now, the silence is a canvas. He can get to know the man he actually is, not the man he was forced to be. He finds an intense, quiet joy in the mundane, waking up at 500 a.m. just to watch the sunrise, drinking coffee without someone rushing him, arranging his home exactly how he wants it, knowing that when he returns, nothing will have been moved. This level of autonomy is highly addictive. Once a man tastes this pure, unadulterated peace, it takes a truly spectacular human being to convince him to give it up. So, does this mean the senior man hates humanity? Does he want to die completely alone? Absolutely not. The act of cutting people off is not an act of hatred. It is the ultimate expression of self-respect. In psychology, this is known as personal integrity. Erik Erikson's final stage of psychosocial development is integrity versus despair. A man achieves integrity when he looks back on his life and accepts it. But more importantly, when he aligns his current reality strictly with his deepest values. He hasn't closed his heart. He has just raised the drawbridge. He is shifting his life from quantity of connections to absolute quality. He would rather have 0 friends than 5 fake friends. He would rather spend a weekend completely alone than spend it with someone who makes him feel alone. The people who are allowed inside his inner circle are there because they have passed the test of time, loyalty, and peace. They are people who do not demand him to perform. They are people who respect his silence just as much as his words. He fiercely protects this tiny circle because he knows that at this stage in life, genuine connection is as rare as gold. By cutting off the 95% of people who were draining him, he finally has the energy to deeply, fully love the 5% of people who actually matter. So, the next time you see an older man who has stepped back from society, who has stopped showing up to the chaotic gatherings, and who seems completely content in his own world, do not pity him. Do not assume he is broken. Do not assume he is lost. Understand that you are looking at a man who has successfully completed the hardest mission in life. He has survived the demands of the world. He has processed his traumas. He has organized his soul. He has weighed the opinions of society and found them to be completely worthless compared to the value of his own peace of mind. Cutting everyone off isn't a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate display of maturity, wisdom, and strength. It is the grand cleanup of a life well lived. He hasn't given up on the world. He has simply chosen himself. And in doing so, he has won. If you are currently in this stage of life, or if you are moving toward it, let me know in the comments below. What was the moment you finally decided to choose your peace over people-pleasing? If this story changed the way you view the quiet strength of those who choose solitude, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the psychological truths that society often tries to ignore. Protect your inner sanctuary. The next chapter of wisdom will be revealed soon.